Okay, so I'm gonna actually invite people to turn on the chat if you don't have it on. And I'm gonna do a little bit of content at the beginning of this. I'm gonna have to leave at about 6:55 because I have a congregational board meeting tonight I have to go to, unfortunately. But by then we'll be in social time. So I'm gonna kind of switch that and go through some nitty gritty stuff with you all and then give you some time to just chat and there are some really great key players in the room that can answer questions about various things. So I kind of did a little, I sat down and did some downloading of like, if I was a new DRE, what do I want to know? And I just pulled some of that stuff together, which I put in a shared doc. So you don't really have to take notes so much as just copy the link when we get to that part. I'm Kirsten Hunter. I serve on the LREDA board, and Aisha Hauser is here as well, our board president. You just met Avianca. There's some UUA staff and good officers and other folks in the room too. And we will take some time to introduce those folks after we do a little opening. And I just wanted to do a chalice lighting with y'all because I'm super happy to have you here, and I'm happy to just have a second to celebrate you because I cannot imagine what it's like to be starting being a DRE in the midst of what's happening in the world right now. So I'm kind of a poetry nut. I got a new book in the mail today that I'm super excited about. Joy Harjo, who's the poet laureate of the United States. I think she's still currently serving.
And the first Native American to serve in that role.
She just put together this book called When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through. It's a collection of Indigenous authors. And so I'm going to read a short poem called Prayer Bowl for you all as I light a chalice. Let's see if I can make this visible. And I just invite you to settle in and breathe. When the moon is turned upwards like a bowl waiting to be filled, we must fill it. We must fill it by honoring the spirits of creation with songs of our joy and thanks, with food created with our own hands, water for the thirsty, prayers for the people, prayers for the spirits, prayers for the creator, prayers for ourselves and the sacred instruments that join us to the glory of this world, that join us to the glory of this world and to the world beyond our sleep. That was written by Karaine Wood. Her first name is spelled Karenne. She's a Monacan. She died in 2019. So welcome. I'm gonna share a doc. Sarah Getty, I see your note. I didn't, but I'll grab it once I pass things off. I'm going to share a doc and I'm going to share my screen for a second, but I'll also put the link in the chat box. So when we start going into the sort of content of it, we can go to that. So that message is for you all. Sorry, I bet that just messed up your reading. Hang on
1 second. Kirsten, would you mind reading it out loud?
I will. I'm just plopping the link and I'm a terrible multitasker. Okay. This is a really hard time to learn this work. Even those of us who have been doing it for a long time are struggling with how to serve our people right now and how to care for ourselves and set limits and get dressed in the morning and Religious educators are the most creative, bold, heart-forward, collaborative, warm, funny, quirky, awesome group of people you may ever have the opportunity to know. It's really important to remember there is so much potential in the ministry we offer the world. That recognition is energizing and sustaining. If you need someone to remind you, call on this community. We are here for you. So, if you want to read along, you can. I put the link in the chat, and the rest of this is just kind of some nitty-gritty things, and I thought I'd just kind of go through it quick to help you sort of get sort of start thinking or see what questions you have, and know that you can kind of put your fingers on some of this stuff. And it is not by any means comprehensive, but maybe is helpful to just sort of have it in one place as a reminder of where other things are and some things that you may want to be thinking about as a religious educator as you settle into your work and try and figure out how to do what you've been hired to do. So I split the resources up into some connections to UUA resources. There's, as I said, a couple UUA staff in the room, so I'm gonna introduce them in a little bit and let them speak about their portfolios and kind of talk about how they are here for us in some significant ways. The links to that include the Ages and Stages page, which is just sort of the UUA sort of main place for sort of naming different ways that we serve various age ranges of people in our faith. And any one of those links kind of take you to a whole bunch of places. So when you're looking for something, just think about going before you start reinventing the wheel, because I think sometimes it's like you see a need and you think, it's sort of isolating work when we work in congregations. And so you think like, I have to figure out how to do this, but chances are very, very good that many religious educators have been trying to figure out the same thing, and it's probably somewhere, or at least some ideas for it are somewhere. So that kind of idea of remembering there's lots of resources out there and places for you to go. The Tapestry of Faith curricula that are online through the UUA website are searchable. You can search them by theme, you can search them by just all kinds of different things, and that's really helpful. So even if you're not using, yeah, Aisha.
Sorry to bother you. Can you just change the permissions for the Google?
I thought I had done them right.
I do that too, and I don't get it right. You want to double check that real quick?
Yeah, no, it changed. I did change it, but anyone with the link changed. All right, I'm going to repost the link. Ignore the first post, copy the second one.
It works now. The first one worked.
Okay.
Yeah, it's working
great.
now.
The
Just
link
had to
is changed.
refresh.
That's great. Okay, wonderful. Sorry about that. But yeah, so Tapestry of Faith, the curricula online, even if you're not using a particular curricula, you may find parts of different curricula are helpful. The same is true. There's also some curricula and resources around that stuff at the FOS Collaborative. So that's a really good thing to check out. That's linked there. They are religious educators housed at Meadville Lombard Theological School. And they do some really great stuff, and that's a great place to check out. And the other thing is Worship Web on the UUA website, another sort of quick go-to. You can search if you're looking for like chalice lighting words or a Time for All Ages story, or even just some like food for thought for a message you might want to give to a children's chapel, or just all kinds of things sort of worship related. And that also is a searchable resource. There's also an app for it. And if you download the app, it has an electronic chalice, which comes in handy sometimes if you don't have a chalice on you. So just like little things that identify you as a religious educator by trade when you bust out a chalice from your cell phone app.
Was that Worship Web?
Worship Web, yep. And then also there are a ton of Facebook groups, and I know people have mixed feelings about Facebook, but if you're willing to venture into that space, I really encourage you to join and become a member of some of those collegial groups. I listed some of the main ones. There are a couple specific to COVID that are wildly helpful. The tech one for COVID, if you have to do tech stuff in your congregation right now and weren't expecting to have to do that, again, you can search the Facebook group and find conversations about like, how do I do breakout rooms on Zoom? Or how do I do this particular UU-ish thing using, you know, how do I record a time for all ages with 2 people, or just all kinds of stuff like that. The Unitarian Universalist Religious Educators Group, which is continental wide, and there's so much in the archives of that group of like things people have posted, coloring pages, and just everything from the simplest resources to really complex conversations about our field. That you can find in that space, and ask questions and just start to meet one another. It's a weird thing, but you'll get to know religious educators that live on the other side of the country or live in Canada, and you may not cross paths in a physical space for years, but by the time you do, you're like, oh my God, I love you. You posted about, I totally, you know, whatever it is, you get to know one another by the work we share with each other and the ideas we share. So I really encourage that, even though Facebook is relatively evil. We make good in evil spaces sometimes. There's also the LREDA Facebook page, which I hope you have, that you're a part of. If you aren't, please consider that. And then there's other like sub pages, like there's a LREDA parents page. If you are a religious educator who has children, that's like a place for us to be like, how the heck are you doing this? My kids are doing school at home and I'm losing my mind, you know? So it's like, there are cohort groups within Facebook for all kinds of things. OWL pages, there's Take Flight OWL pages now for like how to do OWL online. All kinds of great conversations in that area. So again, like I can't comprehensively list everything, but if you're looking for it, it's probably there and it's worth asking or searching for it. And the other thing is there's a credentialing program page on Facebook, as well as of course resources on the UUA. So if and when you get to a place where you want to think about credentialing, that's another thing that like you can ask other people who are in the credentialing process, or you can kind of get a direct grab of a chat that's happened before about a question you might have. And definitely look for your local cohort of LREDA. There is chapters of LREDA all across the US and in Canada. Canada has a chapter, I believe. They're all together. If you haven't hooked up with your local LREDA chapter, I really encourage you to do that. And somewhere in this doc, a little further down, I put my email. If you haven't found your chapter and you want help connecting with them, you can email me and I'll help you. I'll get you a point person to talk to who's in your local area. There's a couple anti-racism resources that are right there for you. As a new religious educator, you may or may not be comfortable with navigating those conversations or taking the lead around that stuff. And I really encourage you, especially if this is a new thing for you, to lean on work people have done who know what they're doing. And so I connected, Leah Derlin-Jones is a religious educator in just recently published work that their congregation did with a children's anti-racism curriculum that's pretty great. And there's a program called Jubilee. So you can plug in adults in your congregation. They also have Jubilee Kids to do some like intentional anti-racism work. And again, like it's totally okay to outsource that stuff if you are still doing the work yourself to get to a point where you feel competent to be able to do that without causing harm. Lean on your colleagues and lean on work that's been discerned around that, so that we're being really intentional about how those conversations are happening. And then just things like Pinterest, Spotify, like if you Google whatever in some of these spaces, you'll come up with all kinds of stuff. So I was looking for music for our teens, and I did like a Spotify search, and there was like all these friendly sort of theme connected playlists and things that you can find that other youth groups have put up or whatever. So just kind of thinking about the fact that the internet is our friend. There's lots of ways that you are putting things out there that we can access with one another. The other thing I put on this doc for you is professional support. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm going to stop in a minute and let you ask questions and introduce people. But professional support links are on here. The LREDA website has a ton of really great stuff. And in particular, people coming into religious education as opposed to other fields, like we come from a whole lot of different paths. So depending on how you were hired, you may or may not be aware of opportunities for paths towards deepening your professional skills, towards credentialing. You may not know what the recommended fair compensation is for religious educators. You may not even have a good sense of what your job is. So I linked some of the things that are on the LREDA website here for you to just know that this information is out there to look at, including, you know, best practices for employment of religious education professionals, staffing levels and scope of work. So like if you've been hired for this particular as a religious education coordinator or as a director of religious education, like some basics of like, here's probably what your job should look like. Acknowledging that things are really different from congregation to congregation, and also acknowledging that congregations are all over the map in terms of what their financial resources look like, what they are able to offer by way of compensation, et cetera. It still is good to be informed and to be aware of sort of what you're aiming for in terms of professional, both sides, both what you should be trying to accomplish, and then also the things that really sort of put you in right relationship with the people who are employing you. And connected to that is the Good Officers program, which is professional support, and not necessarily around compensation, but it could be. But really, anytime something in your work setting feels sticky or complicated and you're not quite sure what to do, Good Officers are trained religious professionals who are tasked or are ready to receive phone calls, emails, and offer support of like, yeah, that is a concern. Here is what I would do, you know, sort of give you best practice, suggestions, listen, put you in touch with the right people, give you the information you need to navigate those kinds of situations. And the earlier you call when something's kind of creeping up, the better that is. So it could be like, you know, a new staff person comes into your workspace and it kind of throws things for a loop and it feels off. And you're like, this doesn't seem right, you know, and you can call a Good Officer and sort of explain the situation, and they can say, yeah, that actually sounds exactly right. That's what happens when a new staff person comes in. Or they could say, yeah, no, that doesn't sound right to me either, and here's what I would do. So I really recommend keeping that in mind if things start feeling sticky or complex, to lean on your Good Officers. And colleagues too, as I said before, your chapter colleagues are great folks because they're closer to you. So there's lots of regional things that that you may be able to pool resources on or just kind of problem solve around. The larger LREDA network, all of your colleagues, I really can't recommend enough how powerful it is to lean on this pool of people. They're just wildly generous with one another. And then credentialing, which is a down the road thing. And this is the last thing I'll say, and I will shut up. Credentialing is this path towards becoming a trained religious educator. And it's a really fabulous program. And I wouldn't recommend you to actively start doing credentialing as you're first beginning to be a religious educator. However, if it's something you think you're going to want to do, if this work feels like something you may want to do for a while, and there's a chance that you may want to follow a credentialing path a few years from now, I would highly recommend you start doing a really simple thing right away, which is documenting your professional development. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot of work, but if you create like I use Google Drive, so I would create a folder on my Google Drive, but wherever, however you store things, create a folder called professional development. And anytime you do something, including LREDA Fall Con, just put a page, just put a new doc in there, title it whatever it is. What I did with my credentialing was I had like a folder for Ren mods, and I had a folder for professional gatherings, and a folder for whatever the things were. And I listed on this document for you just a few things to write down. It can be a paragraph. You don't have to put a whole lot into it, but what the thing is. So LREDA Fall Con, the dates. If there's a theme or a presenter, make a note of what that is. So this year is widening the circle, like note that we explored widening the circle. During the experience, jot down some takeaways for you. What were the meaningful things? Or what did you wish was there that was missing? Or a colleague that you met that was really like, oh my gosh, I met this woman and she blah, blah, blah. And just anything that you think 3 years from now, when you're trying to remember what you did at LREDA Fall Con, will kind of prompt your memory and help you say, oh, I did this thing. Because when you get to the place of doing credentialing, one of the things they want is for you to document all of the professional development work you've done. And so trainings and collegial gatherings and workshops you host and curricula you write, all of that stuff falls in there. And these little bits of writing save you mountains of time later in trying to like figure it all out. So that's my download. And I want to, you all are my sort of charge, not just new DREs, but supporting my religious educator colleagues is sort of my portfolio on the LREDA board. And so, feel free to reach out to me if something comes up. I am a point person for chapter leaders, but if there's like a resource you're really looking for and you can't find it or whatever, like I totally welcome you reaching out. Aisha is really open to stuff too. You can just holler at her. She's pretty amazing in her ability to respond to millions of things. Or any of us, just know that you got some serious support out here, even if it feels a little lonely sometimes. And I want to introduce some key folks. So I'm going to just start with our UUA staff, and I'll let them sort of share about their portfolio. But Anna Bethea and Sarah Getty McNeil are both here with us tonight, and I'm so glad you guys could join us. So Sarah, if you want to start and then pass it on to Anna, and we'd love to just sort of hear about what y'all do and anything you want to add to what I've said.
Sure. And I want to acknowledge Nancy Combs Morgan sent a chat about a training that she's going to hold. So maybe, would it be okay, Kirsten, if we invite Nancy to talk after Anna?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Just a little bit, yes. All right, I'm Sarah Getty McNeil. I go by Sarah Getty as a first name. I am the Professional Development Programs Manager at the UUA. I come to you from Bloomington, Indiana. And I held 3 portfolios, 2 of which pertain to religious educators directly. So one is the Renaissance program, and the second one is the the Religious Educator Credentialing Program that Kirsten was talking about. And she's totally spot on. If you think you might ever be interested in being in credentialing, just start making note of your professional development and the trainings that you attend right now. You're going to thank yourself, future you is going to thank current you if you do that. The other thing is that even if you're not interested in jumping right into credentialing, and I mentioned that we do ask that people be in the congregation in their position for 6 months at least before you begin credentialing. But we have these professional development opportunities, and those are called Renaissance modules. So if you've taken a Renaissance module, you'll be familiar with the format, but if you haven't, it's a course. They're anywhere from usually 4 to 6 sessions in length. All of them are being offered online right now. And the first Renaissance module that we encourage folks to take if you're new to religious education is the Administration as Leadership one. There's also a one on UU identity if you're relatively new to Unitarian Universalism. I was when I first started out as a religious professional, and so it was important for me to get a stronghold on what it meant to be UU. And we have lots of other opportunities as well. So those are the portfolios I hold. And the other thing that I want to name is that the credentialing program, if you start to look at that, it can seem pretty standard and very academic in its approach, but there are lots of on-ramps to the program. There's a lot of flexibility. And so I encourage you, if you look at it and you're like, whoa, I'm not sure I'm qualified for whatever reason, please reach out to me and have a conversation. I just want you to know that any questions you have about the Renaissance modules or about credentialing, please know that my metaphorical door is open at all times. You can find my information on the UA website. The other thing is that, Kirsten, I had a document of resources that I could share. It's a little more UUA heavy. A lot of it is similar, but if that's okay with you, I can share the link too. And cool. Thanks. And Anna, I turn it over to you.
Hey, sorry, my camera has been off a little bit. I've been eating dinner, shoving some food in my mouth, but I'm so glad to be with you all. I'm a strong believer in beginner's mind, and I think that one of the things that I want to make sure that you all know is that although there's a lot of information and a lot of colleagues who can help you along the path, you are our innovators, and that's not to put so much pressure on you, but you bring your own gifts and your own background and your own personality and your own communities into this work. And so I want to encourage you to, yes, check in where your knowledge or your wisdom, it doesn't have as much purchase or as much grounding. We're here to support you, and we're also behind you in making some of the revolutionary changes that we need within religious education and faith development. So with that, I will, I apologize. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Anna Visay. I'm the Director of Faith Engagement, Lifespan Faith Engagement at the UUA, and I'm a newbie too. I've been in my role for less than a year, so I'm also learning alongside you. So it's a delight to be with you, and I'll turn it over to Nancy.
Hello, dear new colleagues and ongoing colleagues. It's a delight to be here. It fills my heart with warmth to see so many of you who, as you're entering this chapter in your life. So I serve in congregational life. I serve in the Mid-America and Southern regions. My colleague and I, Cameron Young, are available to religious educators to coach, companion, have a conversation. We do our best to connect. You heard from Kirsten about LREDA clusters. We also try to inform new religious educators about those groups and more. But we are committed to making sure to help particularly new religious educators. And yes, we have some that just started literally when this pandemic began. So we have decided, Annie Scott and I, to offer a national 3-part webinar series for the newer virtual religious educator. And that's going to be November. And I will put the dates here in the chat, and as well as the time and the cost. And the registration will be up shortly on the Mid-America website. But if you are in Mid-America or Southern regions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from you. All the best.
And Nancy, just making sure you don't have to be Mid-America, it's nationwide.
This is nationwide, yes. And of interest, we're making sure, even though a couple of them are newer, we have 2 religious educators who are religious educators of color who have been trained in group spiritual direction. So we're going to be doing some breakout times in the 3 webinars. So I think that's important to hear.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will also add that little bit of info to the shared doc that I gave to y'all. So it'll be there if you're not wanting to write things down, or if you want to keep it all in the same sort of places, they'll be there in a second. I'm also going to invite Tracy. I see you in the room and you are a good officer. So I just wondered if you wanted to add anything to what I had shared around good officers, or if there was anything else you wanted to add, because I see you, and just sort of say who you are.
I'm in Westchester, New York, a religious educator. And Kirsten, I love that you said to call early, not to wait until things bubble up. So, and you can call any good officer. You don't have to call the good officer who's in your area. There's a list on the LREDA page. You'll find all the good officers, their contact information, a little bit of a bio, and really the kind of calls that I love to get are the something's starting to kind of bubble up and I just want to think through it, and sort of the bouncing off before things, you know, become big. Because sometimes when things become big, then that's trickier. So we like to say call early, call often, and it's just you know, to touch base with someone and get some resources and some support. Thanks, Kirsten.
So glad you're here. Michelle, how about you? Any chance that you want to share anything to the room, or just introduce yourself? I'm looking for veterans that are here that may just want to say something or have something in mind, and then I'm going to open it up to questions.
Sure. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if my mic works. Oh, good. Oh, excellent. I was experimenting with a new computer. It's really good to see you all. I'm Michelle Grove. I'm a veteran. I've been around a while and I'm looking for good new ideas. So I am sure that you have as much to teach us as you might be looking for from some of us. I'm an interim religious educator, so I do a lot of transitional work. I go into congregations who are kind of in between staffing to help them figure out their next steps. I am currently in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, and after this year, we'll see, because I finished up my interim here. So that's about all I've got right now, except that I'm really excited to see you all. So thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Michelle. And the other Michelle too. Anything you want to add to?
Hello, I am Michelle Mackenzie Creech. I am the Director of Lifespan Family Ministry at the UU Congregation of Lincroft, New Jersey, Monmouth County. I almost forgot where I'm at. I haven't been to my congregation in so many months that I've forgotten where I'm located. But it's in Monmouth County, New Jersey, which is Central Jersey Shore-ish. I'm serving on the community relations team for fall conference, and I'm also a good officer. And I also serve on the LREDA committee on mentoring, which is a service that LREDA provides to candidates in the credentialing program. And so someday, if you decide to venture into credentialing, I may be working with you to match you with a mentor. I still have a little bit of time on that committee, so I may see you there. But I'm really looking forward to getting to know you all. And LREDA Fall Con is just such a wonderful way to get to know people. And even though we're in this virtual environment, I still think that it's going to be a great opportunity for you all to connect with people. So it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.